thank you to all of you for being here. Take a deep breath. Take in what you're about to see. And just as a reminder, you might want to turn your ringers off. I have to remember to turn mine off so that you're not interrupted by the experience. So once Eva has a seat, we can get started. And then afterwards, it's a really short video. Afterwards, I'll talk about it and take questions. Laura, if you want to ask me some stuff. Okay. All right, so here we are, Safe Passage. Questions, comments? Yes.
I have a question. Since your son is still young, and this is meant to be, the question is there safe passage for the black body, and your son is in it. Does your heart break when you look at this?
Definitely, when I first started doing this and really sat and took it in was yes. And you have to realize that when I first started this project, it was in 2020, and George Floyd happened and Ahmaud Arbery happened. And so that's why I started really thinking and asking those questions, because here you have a man who's just jogging and then he ends up dead. And so I started thinking, and we know there's countless of other stories. Tamir Rice was only 12. And so when I started this, Phoenix was 12. And, so I'm thinking as a mother, we all have worries about our children. But then as a mother of a black child, now you've got that added concern or worry about, okay, at what point is he going to be seen as being a threat? So by the second time that I did this, you can see him a little bit older, a year older, already I started feeling like he's looking different now. He doesn't have like that baby, innocent face as much, right? And so my idea is to continue this and see the change and keep asking this question. And also put it in the form like from my point of view as a mother. Yeah. Also, like in the beginning of the film, my intention was to like take you from past to present. So you're seeing the fields.
It's like sugarcane field almost.
Sugarcane field,
Those
those.
look like a cane field. That's what I've been thinking.
That's what you're thinking?
I'm thinking cane field, I'm also thinking slavery as well. So
Yes.
the difference getting from Africa to here so that we can.
Right. It's part of the idea of that passage. Which passage, though? Passage of, from the Middle Passage, or running through the fields? Yes.
I really like that in the opening scene, there's two images where there's movement, and then in the other there's kind of like a stagnance, and the only thing that's moving is the curtains as they're like billowing and like, motion from the wind. But it kind of feels like you have to move and you have to progress in life, though it's unsure and it's dark ahead. But if you don't move through life, the passage of time moves through you, kind of like how, wind moves through curtains, you know?
I love that analogy. When I first started thinking about this, I started out by saying, is there a safe space? But to me, the word space was more stagnant than passage, because we're talking about moving through from one point to another. So you make a good point there. Yes.
I don't know if this was your intention, but at first I didn't know whether it was the same boy. I knew they looked different. And then you clarified that it was a year later for part of this, like he looked older in one of the visions in the picture, in the movie. And the passage for me was the questioning of, does he make it through? What's his future? What's his now? The second boy was almost like the ghost boy. Like, this is what I would have looked like had I made it. So you transcend through time, you get stuck in the now, and can you go forward? So the questioning on the boy's face was, I don't know if I made it. And then in the beginning, when you talked about the passage, I saw the ancestors and I saw the fields. And then the image on the right was very similar to some of the back alleys of cities, like those skinny alleys that some neighborhoods have. So those are sometimes the most not safe places for black boys. So is that the passage? Can he make it home? So that's what I felt through the energy that I felt through this entire film, questioning and the legacy of just one black boy, but many.
That's right. That's right. You guys are amazing. But that is what it is. It's the questioning. And the fact that we have to question, and that we do need to, that we are thinking about these things is all part of it. And I wasn't thinking about that, the alleyway. That's another great analogy as well. For me, that piece that you're talking about was, because the process is important to me as well, was me building the structure, right? Because for me, the building of the structure, the building of the safe passage has meaning as well. Was that a handout?
Just a quick little, you just tell me no if it's not possible.
Okay.
Is it possible to play this again, maybe with the lower sound and talk over it? Because I don't think everyone saw it. Who's here probably saw it at this point. So we're having more people come in.
We can do that if people don't mind.
Yeah.
if people don't mind. Because see, for me, like going back to the question that you said about going through it, like it's not easy for me, because you have to like sit with it, and then the part where the boy is standing there, I on purpose made it a little longer than what is really, comfortable, because it's not about being comfortable, So, okay, so one more time for the people in the back.
Just loop it.
We could loop it with the sound off, right?
Yeah, so we kind of see it, we can emerge it. Submerge yourself.
Thank you, Michelle.
Is there a safe message for the black body?
So, so there's a lot of symbolism. The fabric, you can see the edges. You see the edges of the fabric, which represent I forget the name of what it's called, the edges of the fabric, but it's not fringe,
Selvage.
Right.
Frame. Selvage.
selvage, selvage. And that's the part that holds everything together. And I was going to get rid of that, and someone told me, no, keep it, keep it, keep it, because of there's so much symbolism in the work. There's also, people may not notice this, but there's like a ladder in one of the previous frames, and I kept trying to get that ladder out of the shot, and every time I filmed, it was the right shot, but the ladder is still in it. And then I started looking up, but what's the symbolism about a ladder? It could be, ascension. It means, a lot of different things, the connection between the earth and the heavens, and so I kept that in there. But those are like some little things you may not notice unless you're, looking.
Even Jacob's ladder.
Jacob's ladder, that's right. That's right. The sculptures are called witnesses. All of my sculptures, I call them witnesses, even if they have their own names. So these witnesses in particular are specific for this, watching over, being a witness to him or the many hymns, witnesses of the past, present, and future, especially what was going on at the time I started with this. Any questions? Yes.
So the first time I watched it, I noticed, the witnesses, and they were just kind of, on the black fabric, and it kind of represents like them existing in space itself, and they really resemble your son. And it's almost like your ancestors staring you in the face and trying to have conversation with them. And then when his side profile is showing for most of it, and then he turns, and gives this like, his eyes are so big and like knowing, and it's almost like, although your fate is unknown, there's already an expectation. And it's almost like, as you're staring your ancestors in the face, you have to ask yourself, am I qualified to heal the traumas of my ancestors? Am I like, it's so much weight to carry on my shoulders. It's so much weight to be, black, of course, a black man on top of that, especially in this kind of climate where a little kid could be playing with a toy gun and gets killed, or somebody could be jogging, somebody could be sleeping in their own homes. And it just represents a connection to the past and the present, and almost like, damage and repair, trying to heal that brokenness of my ancestors. And like, you carry the same face as them, and it's like their blood is coursing through your veins, and it's your responsibility to, I guess, rectify their fate through your experiences,
Have you read anything by Patrice Malidoma Somé? He speaks exactly about that. Patrice Malidoma Somé speaks about the our duty in terms of healing the ancestors through our actions. So I definitely suggest you take a look or listen to that. Yes.
My question is in the creation of this passages, especially working with your son, how has it influenced or impacted your relationship, your conversations that you have with your son about, like, basically, is there a safe passage for the Black body?
Wow. I'm not even sure how to answer that question. The interesting thing is that, like, since we've taken all of the material down from the structure, he is the one who kept calling it the safe passage. Like, I was like, oh, we got to take those 2x4s down and stuff, and he's like he's named it the safe passage. And yes, we've had those conversations that he doesn't want to hear. He doesn't want to hear those conversations about safety and being out there in the world and so on. But I still feel like it's important to have those conversations. But this has been a vehicle to talk to him about, like, do you understand what this is that we're doing? Do you know why I'm doing this? And what it means? So in that sense, it's been a vehicle for me to bring that conversation to him without resistance from him. And anytime I ask him, like, he's totally open to participating. He would never want to be here sitting with us to have us look at him and talk to him about it, but he's definitely open to being a part of this project. I told him that we'll do it for as many years as he'll allow me to. Yeah. Yes.
I read an article recently about institutionalized maturation of Black youth, and how, because they're seen as adults very, very early in life,
Yeah.
which I believe is a carryover of slavery, because once children became a certain age, they went to work like the adults did. So it's like a colonized thing, different than what was done in Africa, where there were stages that you went through when you were considered an adult. You were considered an adult as a slave pretty much like by the time you were like 5 or 6 years old. And I think the important thing about this piece is that it very blatantly, with a lot of sensitivity, shows how Black youth are maturized very early, and that's the reason why the responses to them, like Tamir Rice and so forth, are done the way that they're done, because they're not seen as children. Black children are stopped being seen as children, just like in slavery, like around 6, 7, 8 years old. So I think this is a very important piece for people to really understand the effects of it, and really get to the core of it. Like, their hearts need to be broken too, because unfortunately in some way, shape, or form, we've participated in it, whether or not we're of color or not. And that's something I wanted to offer to you, to, like, this piece can be used to really challenge people's thinking about how they see young Black people, or young people of color, period.
Yeah. Thank you.
Was one of the witnesses blind? The lady with the curly curls, like the eye. I guess the way it was sculpted.
Maybe.
Maybe.
It's an organic process. So, it could be. It's a good question. Yeah.
So I'm looking at, when I look at, again, I keep seeing that cane field because it just reminds me of a cane field. And when I see a cane field, I'm also reminded of slavery. And I'm thinking about our history here from the time we landed here as a people. We have been fighting for a safe passage. And look at where we are now, and even though we shouldn't be in that position now, we're still fighting for a safe passage. We're still fighting. Young black men are still fighting to feel safe in the world, to feel like they can go out there and not be a threat to people. Young black women, the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, you think about that experience everywhere, just leaving your house and going outside, going to work and not being viewed as a threat. So it just feels like when I look at the film, I'm seeing where we came from and where we are today, and I still feel like we're still in that position where we're fighting for our safety.
I have a question though, because I feel like, and I wonder if other people feel like, the younger generation, do they see things differently? Like if you have young people, do they see things differently in terms of race and gender relations? Because in my experience, my older son especially seems to be a lot more accepting of all different types of people. And so I just wonder about that, if other people have thoughts about this generation, this younger generation, and how they view things. Yes.
I think, I feel like I'm kind of like, in a way, like on the cusp. You know, I'm young, like, but so like, I feel like the context of how you view things really does shift. Like when you're younger, it's more from like an egotistic standpoint where you assume that everyone views things how you do, and you're not really able to look outside of yourself or view things as a collective. You focus and fixate on details and your own understanding of things. So I feel like in a way, younger people are more accepting because they're kind of like thinking of it in the context of themselves. But I feel like with older generations, there's more eyes to account for, and it's not like I guess it could switch, but it's not like you're looking in on yourself. You're just more so focused on how you'll be viewed. You know, like when you're like a little kid, you do like embarrassing stuff like dancing around or something, but like when you're older, there's like that working knowledge that like, oh, people are perceiving me right now, so I can't really, you know. And I don't think that, like how that correlates to the film, I don't think that the boy in the film fully acknowledges that there's a microscope under him. It's only viewing things from the self, and it's only as you get older you realize that, wow, things are dangerous, and even though I'm not aware of it, there are people and things aware of me and perceiving me incorrectly.
Thank you. Yes. What? Oh.
Lou, but I also have a comment, and I thought, I think that for me, the question itself is fascinating. The context of the whole situation you set up. To me, that's the really important part. I like the fact that there's you have this consistent sound, very mellow, consistent sound in the background, which sort of like it becomes like a canvas that allows like found sound or improvised sound to sort of come in. And when the film first started, there was like a siren going by. I was like, what the hell's going on?
I know, right? Like, whoa.
And then the bathroom door opened, and I was like, what the hell? This was like a scary movie. It's like, what's going to happen to this kid? But I thought, I think just the situation you set up, there's so much to do with it, because you could bring in you could leave it as a blank canvas, or you could bring in some of those other like little like scary movie or sounds, but it just tugs on your heart Because once you get in that space of like, because now I tell my son, he's like 9. Yeah, I think so, 9. But I'm like, don't run on people's lawn, they'll shoot you.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, I'm kind of joking, but I'm serious. I'm like, don't run on people's lawn.
But you know, you asked the question about the youth, and I'm a mother of 4, a foster adoptive mother of 6 altogether, and a teacher. Each experience of the youth is who they are, the compilation of things that they've become a part of from the environment in which they exist. So a lot of the, I hate the term inner city youth, are desensitized to this sort of pain, this sort of be afraid of walking on the lawn. But deep down inside, they know that there is something out there. But the further you move away from, I know that there's a gunshot somewhere. I've heard them. They're okay in my neighborhood. We hear them all the time. The further you move away from that, in other areas, more specifically my children, my son is black, his friend was white, and his third friend was Indian. They were setting off firecrackers, illegal firecrackers, in a field in New Providence. The police came. So I had this big conversation with him, sort of like, get off the lawn, kid. He didn't get it. Like, it's you, an Indian and a white. Who's going down, dude? He didn't get it. Because he hadn't experienced enough of that to know that this is real. And I pray that he doesn't. But at the same time, how do you equip a black man to know that stay off the lawn?
And you don't want them living in fear. That's
You don't. We want to live normally.
Yes.
This is more like a comment. I feel like I didn't see one, but I feel like the video is giving a voice to the fear that us as mothers have every day.
Yes.
I have 13 and 17, and I'm scared every day. It's like, where can you live over here? Unless you run, far away. And then there's more problems from the police. He said his son's 9, and it's like joking, don't go on the lawn, but this is a voice to the feeling that we have.
And that's exactly right. That's exactly what it is. And it's not necessarily, we know it's not necessarily at the hands of the police or whatever. It could be in your own neighborhood. It could be in your own neighborhood at the wrong place at the wrong time. I grew up in a neighborhood in Brooklyn where when you said becoming desensitized, like I very much became desensitized because we were in Crown Heights. I was probably about 12. We were very much accustomed to seeing police circling the block, gang fight. Like this was the height of the crack epidemic. So we became desensitized to hearing things like, a gunshot or seeing someone get arrested or even white chalk on the sidewalk. To the point that when we moved and into a neighborhood that was residential, we thought it was boring. We had to get used to that. We had to learn to understand that this is how you're supposed to live. Now I can't go across the street to the bodega. I gotta walk like maybe 10 blocks or whatever. And it took us some time to get used to living in a place where there's a park across the street, or, you know what I mean? You're not seeing constant surveillance, but that could have went, if we didn't move, then I don't know where, there was 4 of us, I don't know where I would be. Or my perception might be, different. Like I said, we were very much desensitized to that type of environment. Luckily, my dad, who raised us, saw that, there was something better and was able to, move from that place. But that is an interesting thing about even becoming desensitized to, and maybe that's a defense. Maybe, so that you can live, day to day. But
Yeah, I know what you're saying about desensitized, because we now have a family member that came out of a very sort of violent situation and come to like a very sort of like peaceful neighborhood. But then I feel like they're seeking out that old way, and it's like, no, you don't have to.
right.
You can just get up, go to school, and just have a regular boring life. Like you don't need to have like 3 or 4 interactions with the police every a month or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
So it's like, but I feel like you can like sometimes what you're saying is that you get out of like, or even I myself, I came from a certain situation, but then sometimes you seek out that thing that's harmful to you, even though you're in sort of a different environment.
Right, and that could be like a whole other conversation about how do you transition from one thing to the next and learn how to adapt maybe a better way of living than being desensitized to the violence.
But like when you say better way of living, I just remember
Different.
as a child living in Newark, there was stuff going on all day, all the time, but it was quote unquote good stuff. Like you could be in the courtyard playing kickball, kick the can at night and not be shot. So when you move me out of a city into a suburban area, the noise is different.
Yes.
And in terms of good or bad, like nobody wants to live where people are dying and that's the norm.
Right.
But good or bad doesn't mean city, suburb. It means
Right.
what have we become accustomed to living with, and what should stay and what should go, and what have we accepted.
I think it's
That's a good
also,
point.
Shouldn't,
That's a good
just
point.
piggyback on what you're saying, Amira, it really shouldn't matter where we live. Our socioeconomic status shouldn't matter. How we live is to me more important. And you shouldn't have to worry about the things that you worry about. The black mother in the urban neighborhood has the same worries as the black mother who's living in the suburban neighborhood,
Right.
which is when my child gets out there, are they safe in the world? It's the same experience, and that experience should not be that way. It shouldn't be that way. And sometimes you think that, okay, I'm gonna pack up and move from the urban neighborhood, and I'm gonna take my child to the safe, suburban neighborhood, and you get there, and the experience is far worse. It's far worse because you feel like your child isn't safe. They're going to school where they might be the only black child in the classroom, when they're going to school. And for me, that experience should not be the same. It shouldn't be that experience. That should not be what we accept as normal. That's not normal. It's not normal. We should not, and I feel like we have to, in order to change what we are experiencing now, we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. We have to voice it. Our ancestors went through a lot of pain, and the way they dealt with it is to not talk about it because it was just too painful to talk about. And what we're doing here right now, this is what we need to do more of. We have to talk about what is traumatizing our neighborhoods. We have to talk about what's traumatizing our families, our children. We have to talk about racism, period, because it exists. It exists. We have to talk about it. We can't just say that, oh, that's not, times have changed, that's not the experience anymore. We're still worried about the same thing that, parents were worried about 50 years ago.
Yeah, one little comment. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think you're right, Laura. Because if my child comes home and she says, "Oh," because I realize that I saw like a parallel experience because I was downtown in Newark a couple days ago and I saw like there's a whole group of kids, school kids in the park, and they were throwing football and yelling and running around, and I realized that's what I did when I was a kid. But then my kid was in the park a few weeks ago playing around and joking around with her friends, and somebody called the police on them. And my reaction was, well, y'all shouldn't be so loud. This is a suburban neighborhood. Y'all can't be yelling. And it didn't occur to me, like, that's what kids do.
Yeah.
But that's that black maturation stuff. That's that black maturation stuff.
But the experience for a black child is that that's not normal. That's not acceptable behavior when it's a black child. And that is not normal. We should not be accepting that.
Right. Yes.
In my many days, I grew up in the suburbs. There were only white people in the suburbs that I knew, and they were Italian. And in that particular season, the friends that I had were mostly Italian, and some Polish people moved in next door to me. So when they moved in, the Italian people told me, don't play with them. You know, we don't like them, so don't play with them. Okay? So then from there, we came to Newark. And that was a whole new experience. Because I didn't know anything about how people live in this area. And it was a whole different thing when I went to school because they had a whole different language that they were doing. You know, like, I'll beat you up and things like that. And I didn't know anything about that because I didn't have to experience that. But it's funny because somebody told me, meet me after school because I'm going to beat you up. And I said, okay. I thought it was a game. So I get outside the school and I said, where you want me to meet you at? So we met outside the door.
Oh, man.
And I was always tall. This little girl came up and she beat me up. She just went on, and I just stood there and let her do it, you know. But I didn't know what it meant. And then one of my friends that were in one of my classes told me, they laughed at me because when I left her doing that, I was walking home and the boy was sitting in the doorway he was cracking up. You know, but I didn't know that's what that meant.
Right.
Then later on in life, my daughter, she moved from North and she went in the suburbs down on South Jersey. And her son didn't know anything about the racism and stuff. But the people down in that area, he would go to that school and we had to tell him, don't say this, don't do that, don't assume that these people are your friends and stuff like that, because he would get in trouble for the least little thing that happened in school. So my daughter and her husband were an interracial couple. So they had some kind of confrontation in school with the boy. He was black. And the principal and all of those, they asked, would you bring your mother to school so we can solve the problem, whatever it was. So the mother said, well, okay, we'll be in school such and such a day at 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, I'm not going down there at 8 o'clock in the morning for my grandson. But I went. So when we arrived, the father was white, the mother was black, and I was black, and the other father was black. The principal came in the room where we were, and he said, oh, I have a meeting to attend to, so I won't be able to handle this.
Oh.
And we just all left, but because he didn't want to confront the situation, and the same thing happened like in Maplewood. My daughter went to a Catholic school. The people were predominantly from Italy or somewhere, Scottish country or whatever. And we integrated that school in Maplewood, and then all our friends started coming, and they didn't understand us either, because my other daughter was living in Montclair, And then she and her friends, they were in a different class,
Hmm.
so they would be driving up, she would tell her friends, well, that's a good school up there, come on, let's go and put our kids in there. And they would drive up in Mercedes and different kind of cars like that. And the people didn't understand that, you know, because they didn't have that atmosphere. So, and a lot of things went on just because of your color, you know. And they would blame her for if two kids were talking, like she passed a note to a Spanish girl, and she got in trouble. I mean, the Spanish girl passed a note to her, and the black girl got in trouble, you know. And then it was just like, they didn't consider us equal to what the studies were and different things like that, you know. And I told them, I said, my daughter went to Montessori school, so she was a little ahead, and, you know, what could you do? And they couldn't do anything. And then they started a gifted and talented class to overcome the situation. Then after they did that, then the teachers, some of the young teachers dropped out, and that left the kids without somebody to learn or be with. And they would just tell them, well, go to the next page in the book and you study because you're supposed to be gifted and talented, so you don't need an instructor to tell you what to do.
Wow.
You know, different things like that went on, and who did you have to defend you? You know, and then on top of that, when it came down, the city of Newark developed these university school and science high school and stuff like that. So I said, well, my daughter wants to go to science high school. Can you accept the application, fill it out, and send it in to the city of Newark? And every time I went to see the lady, she said, oh, it's too late now. I didn't have time to fill it out. So I had to take her out of the Catholic school, put her in the public school in Newark, and call the Board of Education to find what school. And they gave me Mount Vernon. So she went to Mount Vernon for the last semester there, and she went to science after that because they took care of the situation. But I'm just saying, these are things that happen all through these years with two generations of children, you know, so what can we do about it?
That's a whole other thing, the educational system. That's a whole other conversation.
But this is the generational things that are going on
Right.
that they don't get any conversation from the public people. Like now you've got these people running for public office,
Yeah.
but they're not looking at those little things that are going on.
Right.
They're
Right.
looking over it, because they take their kids to another private school somewhere where they're satisfied with their education, you know, and we are still in the community trying to, you know, move our kids up and out,
Right.
you know, so they can come back and be politicians too, or whatever they would
You
be.
starting all this trauma?
A frequent refrain I've heard is people moving from, you know, one area to the next area, maybe because it's perceived that that other area is a better area.
Right.
I mean, everyone wants their kids to progress. So we move from, for example, the city to the suburbs. You know, I mean, my thing is, why can't we build a community for ourselves? You know, build a community where our kids can feel safe, where our kids can elevate themselves and look like us, or whomever wants to join us. You know, we can't keep running from one area to another area to places where other people have built for themselves. You know, I've heard the thing where someone said, oh, the street is dirty here, you know, and they go to another area and they say, oh, the street is nice, clean. I mean, who makes a street nice and clean? The people who are in that area. Why can't we clean the street here? Clean just in front of us. You know, we need to elevate ourselves. You know, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of problems, police and all that, you know, but we need to build communities for ourselves.
We're going into a new era now. And the new era is this, cannabis, okay? You drive your car at a normal rate of speed and in the correct way. And then somebody else comes along and wants to go zigzag and speed through the streets and almost run over you, you know, and you don't know what's going on with them, you don't know whether they had some substance or not, and you don't know whether they're just being juvenile, you know, so in building a new community, you can't sift out who's what and what they're gonna be doing. And what we're doing now, a lot of the merchants in the area, they do try to keep the area clean. And the residents try to keep the area clean. But then other people will come into your area and mess it up. I mean, just on a random thing, like we need to sit out here and eat this popcorn or McDonald's. And so while we're sitting here, we might as well just throw the garbage in the street.
So Ray, I heard you clean the front of the car every morning, is that true?
I try to do my part, but you know the thing is that examples, green shoots. You know, a community may start with 1, 2. You set the example. You know, especially for the younger ones coming up. You know, they can learn. I mean, I went to back home. I mean, home is Jamaica for me. Back home we call it basic school. They call it kindergarten here, or even before kindergarten. Preschool, right? You know, I mean, I'm more than half a century on this earth, huh? But one song that stuck with me all this time is bits of paper, lying on the ground, make the place look tidy, pick it up. Today I know it, yes. You know
what? There used to be, when I was younger, there used to be a commercial that says, give a hoot, don't pollute, never be a dirty bird. They need to bring that back. You know what I mean? Because I think just to keep it in people's consciousness, right? The media has the power to do that. Keep it in people's consciousness. I remember there was a whole thing about saving water. So especially as a young person in the house, you take that stuff in. So, I mean, these are some things that I think can actually be done, but, you know, it doesn't get done unless we speak to our council person, we, you know, do some things ourselves, we have these conversations and then go out and actually, you know, speak to the powers that be. That's what I think.
Yeah, and those are the things, I mean, people take pride in that, in themselves, and if you take pride in yourselves, you're a better person. The person who takes pride in themselves, you know, they act differently.
Well, and
They act differently. You take pride in yourself, you take pride in your community, and it moves on.
And I was going to add to you that part of that pride is taking the act of ownership. If you feel that you own it and you're a part of it, you're going to protect it. Human beings are very territorial. So they're going to clean the stoop. I mean, when my parents immigrated here, they used to be in front of the stoop with the broom, sweeping down the block and whatever have you. And I'm just going to carry this back to the statements that were made about cannabis. No, I don't believe in whatever, but it's always a layer of something to hide what the real problem is. Because we went through many decades of heroin being that layer. And then we went into the cocaine crack, that was that layer. You know, when I was in school, it was liquor, that was that layer of, oh, people are, you know, they're drinking, what is that, cold duck or whatever they used to call it, I don't know. But the point is, yes, now cannabis and whatever other liquor stores on every corner, if you accept that to be whatever, there's a good side and a bad side. God knows that, you know, people who are suffering from whatever, cannabis does help. But it's not our problem. The problem is what is covering, what is underneath there, because you can't tell me that 50 years later, 50 years we've been standing in the same spot. We're still talking about the things that Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, that whole decade of the 60s where, by the way, progress, that's why everybody was assassinated. That's what it is. You know, they want to throw out these smoke signals so that you are distracted from what the real problem is. Go to work, slave, make everybody else rich. back capitalism, you're not going to be the winner. All of our kids are educated now. They got more debt. They got more debt than they can even enjoy being an educated. I call my kids doctor. That's it. You got a degree, you're educated. Don't let anybody tell you that all you got is debt. So there's layers of things that we need to concern ourselves with. And the first is being an owner, being a resident and not a traveler. If you own this spot, everywhere that your spot occupies should be clean. And you can't sit out there. You can't throw your liquor bottle here. You can't throw whatever it is right here. You can't even be on this block because there are other kids that are watching you, and they're watching you for what they're going to be in the future. So I don't know. That's how I feel, because there's no way you can tell me that racism went away when we're doing the same thing. The same thing. And just to speak to your film, this is a legacy of black mothers that we cannot continue to hand down to our sons. Like, even myself, my son wanted to go to school in Florida. I negated that. The time that he was applying and got accepted to the most prominent aviation school in the country, that was the year that they shot those kids in the gas station for playing music. Now, what are we going to do with that? I'm in New Jersey, you're in Florida, you want to play your music, somebody doesn't like, it's not even that they don't like your music, they don't like you. And nobody has taught us how to just be human. Forget the color, because there's more than black and white in this, okay? So, I don't know, sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Again, to tap into what Amira just said, where do we go from here? When I think about your film, where do we go from here? How do we, as black bodies, create that safe passage? What do we need to do to continue the discussion because I feel like Amira said, 50 years later, still standing in the same space. We were in different clothes, different style, different fashion, but we're still standing in the same space.
Same clothes style. Rubbly bell bottoms.
And so speaking on the community, there is a chapter of the Panthers that's actually in Newark. It's called the Panther Solidarity Organization. And they do STP, so Serve the People programs, twice a week. So Wednesdays they do Bradley Course. In the evenings, they help to serve the kids their dinner. And then yesterday, on Saturday mornings, by Hayes and Springfield Avenue, there is a breakfast program, and I have been a part of them since last year. And the Black Panthers had the original 10-point program, which is their mission, right? Their mission is everyone is guaranteed to housing, education, and that amongst the other points, that's the mission. And I think that the most important thing that I've learned is that it does take us as a community, and even in the wintertime, we're out there, whether it's snowing, whether it's raining. The main thing is consistency, which is the most important thing about community, is being consistent as a collective and showing up, because when you show up on the regular, the community sees that. And even yesterday, community members started to come out and volunteer to cook breakfast, to make, to donate their time. And that is the main thing that we want. We want the community to be involved, to help, to serve each other, because if you're hungry, if you don't have a job, if you don't have housing, then there's no other way that you can even progress forward. That you can't even think about, eliminating police brutality if you're hungry, or if you don't know where you're going to sleep at. So one thing I learned is that it starts with the basics, and it starts with showing up for each other and giving each other, the basics, and then helping to educate each other and having conversations on how we can progress and move forward to have a safer community for our children, and our children to learn that everywhere can be safe for them.
You know what, since as you're speaking, I'm thinking that part of this, you know, could and should be like towards the end, we start talking about things like what you just mentioned. You know, like how can we move forward? What are the organizations that are out there already that are helping to create, you know, a safe passage for people? And, you know, thank you for that. I definitely will be thinking about how else I can add on that component to this conversation so that we don't leave
It
feeling...
needs to include people that aren't already aware of the lyrics in the choir song. It has to be placed in front of people that are egregiously unaware of what they're doing. If we don't do that, then there is no progress. Like we talk about like change, why we're here 50 years later talking about the same thing. It's because there's a larger apparatus bigger than ourselves that are in place, right? It's white supremacy.
Yeah.
It's also where the money goes. Like, if schools are an issue, right, for safe passage for the black intelligence of youth, right, then North Star Academy should not be allowed to be getting tens of millions of dollars, and KIPP Academy and Greater Oaks, they shouldn't be allowed to get tens of millions of dollars that should be going to public schools, to science, to arts high and all of that, to open all around Newark, as if they're the ones coming here to save us. That money, some of that money should be allotted, and there should be a demand for that money to be allotted to people like you, to people like you, to people like yourself, and then someone like me can teach there, right? Because I don't want to open a school.
Exactly.
I know where my strengths are, but it's also like being brave enough to confront what we need. It's not just keeping the front of our space clean. It's also about telling someone that's sitting on your porch that you got to move, and then also being brave enough to not involve the police. Right? I've been living on my block in downtown Newark for 2 years. I've gotten in maybe 3 arguments with people about sitting close to where I am, where I live, or on my porch. And some of the confrontations, they were, you know, it wasn't bad. It's like, okay, sis, you know, blah, blah, blah. But because I'm thinking about not only myself, I'm thinking about my mother. I'm thinking about some of the neighbors that I have, you know, which also includes the quasi-racist neighbors I have. And I directly greet them and I talk to them, right, without being afraid. I wave to the Latinos that think that I'm not worth anything because I don't look like them. Why do I have what they have? Which also works in that paradigm. It's like, it's also about direct confrontation as to the why of the thing.
Great.
Yes.
There's a really interesting point to be brought up about residency versus visiting. I think that there are so many human atrocities that our ancestors have witnessed that only remains in the silence of their hearts. And it's like we're almost afraid to peel beyond the layers because we're just so terrified of all this stuff we haven't processed. And so it becomes a matter of juggling so many different facets and you know, like encountering all these things, and then on top of that, searching for escapism. Once you do encounter and face all of these things, it's like, now I know too much. You know, how can I kind of dull how vivid and jagged this is? Yeah.
It is a lot, right? So,
Yeah,
yes.
probably to add to that, down they add classes into it. So
Yeah.
you have another layer,
Yeah, absolutely.
confusion.
Absolutely, there's classes.
Do we want to be next to each other though? I have little questions because it's like, because when it seems like whenever we have money, right? Like racism, they intentionally bought Quabbra in this neighborhood, and fix it up, have the apartment and so forth. But can they get 3 or 4 other people that look like them that come and buy houses here next to them? I mean, all the people here that are sitting here right now, why can't we all just buy a block? Create our own little neighborhood. I don't know. It seemed like when my wife and I wanted to buy a house, it was just easy to just. I'm not as brave as you guys. It was just easy to go somewhere that's ready-made already. Like, I have 6 packages on my porch that FedEx keeps delivering to me. It's the wrong address, and I put, there's the wrong address. They've been sitting there for like 3 weeks. But I think, we all sort of like, when we have some money, can we, just buy houses next to each other? Do we want to?
Do we want to? That's
Yeah,
the
when
question.
we get the money, that goes back to resources.
Yeah, it's when. Yeah.
I want a house. I have a whole tiny house configuration in my head.
Or do you want a house next to me?
Yeah, I don't mind living next to you, as long as you know when to go home, Michelle.
Well, then you don't want it.
Oh my goodness. Unless there's any other questions, I think this is a good place to.
This was quite lively.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for your really thoughtful and insightful questions and for this conversation. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Aquaba Gallery, for creating this space for these kinds of conversations to happen. I do want to say one quick thing. I was here the other night when Ross Baraka had an event. You were here, and it was so beautiful. There was an amazing band, and people were, spitting that poetry and stuff. It's been a long time since I've experienced that, but it reminded me so much of why I love us. What we can do is like so amazing and so beautiful, and we need to keep seeing those things. We need to keep, being joyful and showing our joy and our creativity and our art, our poetry. It's important. It's what uplifts us, who we are, reminds us of who we are in the face of white supremacy, So I want to definitely thank Aquaba Gallery for making this a space where those kinds of things could happen. We have
I have one thing to say. I'm going to piggyback on what this young lady said about showing up. We cannot make any change unless we show up. We have to show up. If there's voting to be done, we have to show up. Our forefathers died for the right of voting. And elections are held and people don't show up to vote. You have one voice, one vote. You have to show up, because if you don't get your people there, you will not effect change. That's just one way of showing up, but there are many different ways of showing up.
And I want to add to that. It's so hard to stop this kind of conversation. Your council person, I live in Jersey City, and I had a situation with my house, and I contacted my council person directly, and that taught me, what they know already is contact those people when you have an issue. Talk to them. Hopefully you have someone that'll listen to you and make some kind of change or something, hopefully, right? But you gotta make your voice heard, all right? Yes.
There was a song some years ago which went like, "We are family."
Mm-hmm.
We are hopefully.
ABC4.
Okay, on that note, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Don't leave, there's stuff outside to eat.
Loop the film, man. Loop the film.
Meeting, you guys are doing.